They say power corrupts, but absolute power reveals who you really are. Sergeant Derek Kowalski thought his badge was a license to hunt. He thought the quiet black man reading on a park bench was just another nobody he could bully for sport. He threw insults, he threw his weight around, and he laughed while doing it. But Kowalski didn't check the ID. He didn't know that the man he was humiliating wasn't a nobody. He was the man who signed Kowalski's boss's paychecks. He was the director of the FBI. And by the time the truth came out, it was too late to beg. The autumn leaves were turning a violent shade of amber in Oakbridge Park, falling softly onto the manicured grass of Sector 4. It was 2:15 p.m. on a Tuesday, a time when most of the city was stuck in cubicles or traffic. But for Sergeant Derek Kowalski, 2:15 p.m. was hunting hour. Kowalski sat in the driver's seat of his cruiser, the engine idling with a low, predatory hum. He wasn't looking for crime. Crime was messy. Crime involved paperwork. Kowalski was looking for compliance. He was looking for someone to break. "You see that?" Kowalski grunted, tapping a thick finger against the glass. In the passenger seat, rookie Benji Foster straightened up, blinking behind his wire-rimmed glasses. Foster had been on the force for 3 weeks. He was 22, idealistic, and terrified of the man sitting next to him. "See what, Sarge?" "The guy on the bench, by the fountain." Foster squinted. About 50 yards away, a man was sitting alone. He was African-American, likely in his late 50s, dressed in a grey hoodie and expensive-looking running sweatpants. He had a pair of wireless headphones on and was reading a hardcover book, completely absorbed in the text. A bottle of water sat on the bench beside him. "He's just reading, isn't he?" Foster asked, confused. Kowalski let out a sharp, mocking laugh. It was a sound like gravel grinding in a mixer. "Just reading, that's what you see, Foster. You see a citizen. I see a loiterer. I see someone scouting the area. I see a potential drug deal waiting for a buyer." "Sarge, he's wearing Nikes that cost more than my first car," Foster ventured cautiously. "He doesn't look like a dealer." "That's how they hide, kid. In plain sight, acting like they own the place." Kowalski shifted the gear stick into park. Though they hadn't moved, he killed the engine. The silence in the car was heavy. "We're going to go have a chat. Consider this a training exercise in situational dominance." Foster's stomach churned. He knew Kowalski's reputation in the precinct. There were rumors, whispers in the locker room about excessive force complaints that vanished, body cam footage that mysteriously corrupted, and settlements paid out by the city that never made the news. Kowalski was an old-school cop, a relic of a time when the badge meant you were the law, not just an enforcer of it. "Do we have probable cause?" Foster asked, his voice cracking slightly. Kowalski turned slowly, his eyes cold and hard like flint. "I am the probable cause, Foster. Now get out of the car." They stepped out into the crisp October air. The park was relatively empty, save for a young mother pushing a stroller near the duck pond and a jogger stretching near the south gate. The man on the bench didn't look up. He didn't flinch. He just turned a page of his book with a slow, deliberate movement. Kowalski adjusted his belt, hitching his pants up. He placed his hand on the butt of his baton, not drawing it, but letting it know he was there. He walked with a heavy, rolling gait, his boots crunching loudly on the gravel path. As they got closer, Foster noticed the details Kowalski ignored. The man's posture was upright, disciplined. The book wasn't a thriller or a magazine. The spine read, "The Geopolitics of Asymmetric Warfare." This wasn't a vagrant. This was someone educated. "Hey!" Kowalski barked when they were 10 feet away. The man didn't react. He didn't even blink. Kowalski's face flushed a dull red. He hated being ignored more than he hated paperwork. He stepped closer, his shadow falling across the man's book. "I said, hey!" Kowalski shouted, kicking the leg of the bench with the toe of his boot. The sound rang out, sharp and jarring. The man stopped reading. He didn't jump. He didn't gasp. He simply marked his page with a thin leather bookmark, closed the book, and slowly removed his headphones. He looked up. His eyes were dark, calm, and possessed an intensity that made Foster take a half step back. There was no fear in those eyes. There was only a quiet, analyzing calculation. "Can I help you, officer?" the man asked. His voice was a deep baritone, smooth and articulate. "Yeah, you can help me," Kowalski sneered, hooking his thumbs into his tactical vest. "You can tell me what you're doing loitering in a public park in the middle of a work day. You got a job, pal? Or you just spending your unemployment check on fancy shoes?" Foster winced. It was the standard Kowalski playbook. Insult, degrade, provoke. Wait for the suspect to get angry, then arrest them for disorderly conduct. The man looked at Kowalski's nameplate, then shifted his gaze to Foster, and finally back to Kowalski. "I am reading, Sergeant." Kowalski. "And enjoying the weather. Is that a violation of the municipal code in this district?" "Don't get smart with me, boy," Kowalski snapped, leaning in. The vein in his neck began to throb. "I asked for ID. You got ID on you, or do we need to take a ride downtown to figure out who you are?" The man sighed, a sound of profound disappointment rather than worry. "I have identification. However, unless I am being detained for a specific crime, I am not obligated to present it to you. This is a consensual encounter, is it not?" Kowalski froze. The legal jargon coming out of the man's mouth was precise. It wasn't the rambling of a jailhouse lawyer. It was the precision of someone who knew the statutes better than the police did. That should have been a warning sign. A massive, flashing red light. But for Derek Kowalski, it was just fuel for the fire. "Oh, we got a lawyer here, Foster," Kowalski mocked, looking back at his partner. "We got a jagged-edge lawyer. You think you know the law? I am the law out here." Kowalski grabbed the man's arm, his grip bruisingly tight. "Stand up, now. You're being detained for suspicion of narcotics distribution and resisting an officer." The man looked at the hand on his arm. His expression hardened. "Remove your hand, Sergeant. You are making a mistake that will cost you your pension." "Is that a threat?" Kowalski roared, yanking the man to his feet. The book tumbled to the grass. "That's a threat against a police officer. Foster, cuff him." "Sarge, I don't think—" Foster stammered. "I said cuff him." The man stood tall. He was taller than Kowalski, perhaps 6'2". He didn't resist physically, but his body remained rigid. He looked directly at Foster, his eyes softening slightly. "It's all right, officer. Do what he says. I want you to remember exactly what is happening right now. You're going to be a witness." Foster, shaking, pulled out his handcuffs. He hated this. Every instinct in his body was screaming that this was wrong. As he clicked the cold steel around the man's wrists, he noticed a watch on the man's left arm. It was a vintage Patek Philippe. God help us, Foster thought. Who is this guy? The ride to the 4th precinct was suffocating. The back of the cruiser smelled of stale vomit and industrial cleaner, a scent designed to mask misery. The man, who still hadn't given his name, sat in the back, gazing out the window at the passing city. He wasn't banging on the glass. He wasn't screaming about his rights. He was eerily silent. Kowalski, conversely, was in high spirits. He was humming a classic rock tune, tapping on the steering wheel. The adrenaline of the bust had him high. "Quiet back there, huh?" Kowalski taunted, glancing in the rearview mirror. "Cat got your tongue? Or you realizing that fancy vocabulary doesn't work when you're in the cage?" The man met his eyes in the mirror. "I'm saving my breath, Sergeant. I prefer to speak when people are capable of listening. You seem incapable of that." Kowalski slammed on the brakes at a red light, harder than necessary, jerking the man forward against the divider. "Keep running that mouth. We'll see how you talk in the holding cell with the real criminals. Maybe they'll like your fancy shoes." Foster stared out the side window, praying for the shift to end. "Sarge, maybe we should just run his prints and cut him loose if nothing pops. We don't have any drugs. We don't have anything. We have resisting and threatening an officer," Kowalski corrected. "And I can find some baggies in his pockets if I look hard enough. You got to learn how the game is played, Benji. We clean up the streets. Sometimes we got to take out the trash before it starts to stink." They pulled into the precinct sally port. The heavy steel doors rolled down behind them, sealing them inside the concrete belly of the station. Kowalski dragged the man out of the car. He marched him through the booking area, parading him past the other officers. "Look what we found in Oakbridge," Kowalski announced to the desk sergeant, a tired-looking man named O'Connell. "Reviewing his legal options in the park, refused ID, threatened me." O'Connell looked up from his computer, eyeing the man in the grey hoodie. O'Connell had been on the job for 30 years. He had a sixth sense for trouble. He looked at the man's face, then at the expensive sweats, then at the demeanor. "You sure about this, Derek?" O'Connell asked quietly. "Book him," Kowalski spat. "John Doe, disorderly, resisting. Throw him in tank 2. They took his belongings, the vintage watch, the wireless headphones, a wallet. Kowalski grabbed the wallet. "Let's see who Mr. High and Mighty is." He flipped it open. There was no cash inside, just a sleek, black metal card and a driver's license. Kowalski pulled out the license. "Raymond Holloway," he read aloud. "Sounds like a butler's name. Address is Maryland? You're a long way from home, Raymond." Raymond Holloway said nothing. He was staring at the camera for his mugshot, his face a mask of stone. "What's this?" Kowalski pulled out the black metal card. It didn't have a credit card number. It had a gold crest embossed on it and a holographic chip. Kowalski squinted at it. He didn't recognize it. He tossed it onto the counter. Probably some VIP club for snobs. Put it in the bag. O'Connell, however, picked up the card. He ran his thumb over the crest, his brow furrowed. "Derek, what?" "This crest. It says Department of Justice." Kowalski laughed. "So? Probably a fake. Or maybe he's a janitor at the DOJ. Who cares? Lock him up." They shoved Raymond Holloway into tank 2. It was a holding cell occupied by 3 other men, 1 sleeping off a drunk, 2 arguing over a dice game. The smell of urine and unwashed bodies was overwhelming. Kowalski leaned against the bars, grinning. "Comfortable, Raymond? Not quite the park bench, is it?" Raymond straightened his hoodie. He walked to the center of the cell, ignoring the other inmates who were now eyeing him. He turned to Kowalski. "Sergeant," Raymond said. His voice was different now. The calm was still there, but the temperature had dropped 10 degrees. "You have exactly 1 hour. 1 hour for what?" Kowalski asked, amused. "To resign," Raymond said. "If you resign within the hour, you might keep your pension. If you wait until my phone call, you will lose everything. Your badge, your freedom, your name." Kowalski laughed so hard he nearly choked. "You hear that, O'Connell? He's giving me an ultimatum. In my house." He banged his baton against the bars, making the inmates jump. "You got a lot of heart, Raymond. Stupid, but a lot of heart. Enjoy the stay." Kowalski walked away, whistling. He sat down at his desk, opened a can of energy drink, and began typing up the arrest report. He was feeling good. He was feeling powerful. In the cell, Raymond Holloway sat down on the metal bench. He closed his eyes. He didn't look angry. He looked like a man who was waiting for a timer to go off. At the front desk, O'Connell was still holding the black metal card. Something about it was gnawing at him. He decided to swipe it through the federal database reader, a machine they rarely used, mostly for checking extradition warrants. The machine beeped. Then it beeped again. Then the screen on O'Connell's computer turned red. A message flashed in bold capital letters. Security clearance. Level 5. Top secret. Identity. Director. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Agency alert. Active O'Connell's face went white. All the blood drained from his head. He looked at the screen, then at the holding cell, then at Kowalski, who was happily typing away. "Derek," O'Connell whispered. "What now, O'Connell? I'm trying to think of how to spell belligerent." "Derek!" O'Connell screamed, his voice cracking. Kowalski spun around. What? What is it?" O'Connell stood up, his hands shaking so hard he dropped the black card. "That guy. In Tank 2! That's not a janitor. Who is he then? The Queen of England?" "He's the director," O'Connell choked out. "The director of the FBI, Raymond Holloway. The guy who took down the cartels in Miami? The guy who reorganized the Chicago field office last year?" The station went silent. The typing stopped. The phones seemed to stop ringing. Kowalski blinked. "Bullshit." "Read the screen." O'Connell pointed a trembling finger. Kowalski walked over. He looked at the monitor. He read the words. He saw the photo. Raymond Holloway in a suit, standing next to the President of the United States. Kowalski felt a cold drop of sweat slide down his spine. It felt like ice water. It's a mistake," Kowalski stammered. "It's a glitch. He was wearing a hoodie. He was listening to rap music or something." He was listening to an audiobook on geopolitics. Foster piped up from the corner, his face pale. "I told you, Sarge. I told you." Suddenly, the phone on the captain's desk in the glass office, overlooking the bullpen, started ringing. It wasn't the normal ring. It was the red line, the direct line to City Hall and federal liaisons. It rang once, twice. Then the front doors of the precinct burst open. It wasn't a lawyer. It wasn't a family member. 4 men in immaculate black suits walked in. They wore earpieces. They moved with the synchronized fluidity of a wolf pack. Behind them walked a woman holding a briefcase, looking like she could cut glass with her jawline. The woman walked straight to the desk sergeant. She didn't ask for permission. "My name is Special Agent Clara Vance," she said, her voice echoing in the silent station. "You are holding a federal asset. You have 3 minutes to release him before I have this entire precinct designated as a hostile entity and shut down." Kowalski stood frozen near his desk. His baton felt heavy. His badge felt heavy. His legs felt like jelly. From the holding cell, a deep voice echoed out. "Agent Vance," Raymond's voice called out, calm as ever. "Take your time. Sergeant Kowalski and I were just discussing his retirement plans." The silence inside the 4th precinct wasn't just quiet. It was the vacuum of space. It was the sound of careers dying, of pensions evaporating, and of the terrifying realization that the blue wall of silence, the code that protected cops from consequences, had just been obliterated by a bulldozer made of federal authority. Special Agent Sterling, previously mistakenly referred to as Vance, stood at the center of the bullpen. She was a woman of sharp angles and even sharper eyes. She didn't look at Sergeant Kowalski. She looked through him, regarding him with the same clinical detachment one might offer a cockroach before stepping on it. "Secure the perimeter," Sterling ordered. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried to every corner of the room. "No one enters or leaves this building without my direct authorization. That includes patrol units. Call them back. All of them. Now wait just a damn minute. The door to the captain's office flew open, slamming against the wall. Captain Frank Donnelly stormed out. Donnelly was a large man, built like a vending machine, with a face permanently flushed from high blood pressure and shouting. He had been running the 4th Precinct for 10 years like a personal fiefdom. He wasn't used to people telling him what to do in his own station. "Who the hell do you think you are?" Donnelly bellowed, marching down the stairs. "You can't just walk into a municipal precinct and start barking orders. I don't care what badge you're flashing. This is my house." Sterling turned slowly. She didn't flinch. She waited until Donnelly was right in her face, his spit flying as he yelled. "Captain Donnelly," she said, her voice dropping an octave, deadly calm. "At 14:45 hours, your sergeant unlawfully detained a federal executive. Under the Patriot Act, Section 802, and the Federal Kidnapping Statute, this precinct is no longer a municipal station. It is an active crime scene under the jurisdiction of the Department of Justice." Donnelly blinked. His bluster momentarily stalled. "Kidnapping? Are you out of your mind? My guy picked up a loiterer for resisting arrest. Maybe he made a mistake on the ID, but—" "A mistake?" Sterling cut him off. She signaled to one of the suits behind her. "Agent Ross, play the audio." Agent Ross pulled out a tablet and tapped the screen. The sound of Derek Kowalski's voice filled the station, crystal clear. It wasn't coming from a body cam. It was coming from a high-fidelity recording device that had been on Raymond Holloway's person. "I am the probable cause, Foster. I am the law out here. Maybe they'll like your fancy shoes." The recording played on, capturing the mockery, the threats, the utter lack of legal standing. Every officer in the bullpen froze. They knew that tone. They had all heard Kowalski talk like that 100 times. But hearing it now, in the presence of the FBI, it sounded like a confession. Sterling paused the playback. "That sounds like deprivation of rights under color of law, Captain. Conspiracy, assault, and given who you put in that cell, it borders on treason." Donnelly's face went from red to a sickly shade of grey. He looked at Kowalski, who was still standing by his desk, shaking. "Derek!" Donnelly hissed, his voice trembling with rage. "What did you do?" "Cap, I didn't know," Kowalski pleaded, his hands held up in surrender. "He was in a hoodie. He was in the park. He looked like a suspect." "He looked like a black man," a deep voice corrected. The heavy steel door of the holding cell block buzzed and clicked open. Raymond Holloway stepped out. He looked impeccable. Despite the rough handling, despite the dirty cell, he carried himself with an air of regality that made the room feel small. He adjusted his cuffs, rubbing his wrists where the metal had dug in. He walked past the open-mouthed officers, past the front desk where O'Connell was trying to make himself invisible, and stopped in front of Captain Donnelly and Sergeant Kowalski. Raymond didn't look angry. That was the terrifying part. He looked disappointed. He looked like a teacher who had caught a student cheating. Only the punishment wouldn't be detention. It would be life-altering ruin. "Director Holloway," Donnelly stammered, his posture collapsing. "Sir, I had no idea. If you had known I was the director of the FBI, you would have treated me with respect," Raymond finished for him. "Is that it, Captain? You treat people with dignity only when you fear their rank. But if I were just Raymond from the neighborhood, if I were just a man reading a book, then Sergeant Kowalski's behavior would be acceptable?" "No, sir, of course not. But—" "It's rhetorical, Captain," Raymond said, waving a hand dismissively. He turned his gaze to Kowalski. Kowalski felt his bladder spasm. He wanted to look away, but he couldn't. Raymond's eyes pinned him to the spot. "Sergeant," Raymond said softly, You gave me 1 hour. I believe only 45 minutes have passed. You still have 15 minutes to resign." Kowalski's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Actually, Raymond interrupted, checking his wrist, then remembering his watch was still in the evidence bag. He looked at the wall clock. "I've changed my mind. Resignation is too easy. It lets you keep your dignity. And you didn't leave me with much of mine." Raymond turned to Agent Sterling. "Agent, has the warrant been executed?" "Yes, Director," Sterling nodded. "We have teams at Sergeant Kowalski's residence and the captain's boathouse as we speak." "Boathouse?" Donnelly squawked. "Why are you at my boathouse?" "Asset forfeiture inquiry," Raymond said casually. "But we'll get to that. Right now, I want my property back, and I want my book. I was right in the middle of a very interesting chapter on the fall of empires." O'Connell scrambled to the evidence locker. He returned seconds later with the bag, his hands shaking so hard the contents rattled. He placed the Patek Philippe, the wallet, and the book on the counter. Raymond picked up the watch. He didn't put it on. He inspected it for scratches. This watch was a gift from the late Senator McCain. "If there is a single scratch on it, Sergeant Kowalski, I will sue you for the cost of the replacement. And since you won't have a job, I imagine that will be difficult for you." He picked up the book. He dusted off a speck of dirt from the cover. "Rookie," Raymond called out. Benji Foster jumped. He had been hiding behind a filing cabinet. "Yes, sir." Raymond looked at him. The young officer looked like he was about to vomit. "You were the only one who hesitated," Raymond said. "You asked for probable cause. You suggested letting me go. You were ignored, but you spoke up." "Barely." "I should have done more, sir," Foster whispered, tears stinging his eyes. "I should have stopped him." "You're 22 years old and 3 weeks on the job," Raymond said, his voice softening slightly. "Stopping a senior training officer is a tall order, but you remembered what I told you, didn't you? To be a witness?" "Yes, sir." "Good. Because you're going to be the state's star witness." Raymond turned back to the room. "Agent Sterling, arrest Sergeant Kowalski. Charges are false imprisonment, assault, civil rights violations, and let's add grand larceny." "Larceny!" Kowalski shrieked. "I didn't steal anything." "My distinct impression," Raymond said, tapping his wallet, "is that there was $200 in cash in here when I entered the park. It seems to be empty now." Kowalski patted his pocket instinctively. The rustle of crisp bills was audible in the silent room. The blood drained from Kowalski's face. He had taken the cash in the car. It was a habit, a tax he levied on people he arrested, figuring they wouldn't complain. "Search him," Sterling ordered. 2 agents grabbed Kowalski. They slammed him onto the desk, the same desk he used to lean on while mocking victims. They patted him down. From his front pocket, they pulled a fold of $100 bills. "That's mine," Kowalski lied, panic seizing his throat. "I went to the ATM." "We'll check the serial numbers," Sterling said dryly. "Cuff him." The sound of handcuffs ratcheting shut on Derek Kowalski was the loudest sound in the world. "And the captain?" Sterling asked Raymond. Raymond looked at Donnelly. The captain was sweating profusely. "Not yet," Raymond said. "I want to talk to the captain, in his office, alone. Well, alone with the door open. I don't want to be accused of resisting." Captain Donnelly's office was a shrine to his own ego. The walls were lined with commendations, plaques, and photos of him shaking hands with the mayor, the police chief, and various local celebrities. It smelled of cigar smoke and lemon polish. Now, it smelled of fear. Raymond Holloway sat in the captain's leather chair. He spun it around slowly, testing the hydraulics. Donnelly stood on the other side of the desk, shifting his weight from foot to foot, looking like a schoolboy called to the principal's office. "Nice chair," Raymond commented. "Orthopedic lumbar support, Italian leather. Must have cost $2,000. On a captain's salary? You must be very good at budgeting, Frank." I have investments," Donnelly muttered, wiping his forehead with a handkerchief. "Investments," Raymond repeated. "Is that what we're calling the Civil Asset Forfeiture Fund these days?" Donnelly froze. "I don't know what you're talking about." Raymond leaned forward, placing his elbows on the mahogany desk. The playfulness vanished from his face. The predator was back. "Let's stop the charade, Frank. Do you think I was in Oakbridge Park by accident?" Donnelly stared at him. The thought hadn't occurred to him. He just assumed Kowalski had been unlucky. "What?" "I live in D.C., Frank. I work at the Hoover Building. Why would I be sitting on a bench in a municipal park in this city, 4 hours away from my office, on a Tuesday?" Donnelly's mind raced. You were on vacation?" "I was working," Raymond said. "We've been watching the 4th Precinct for 6 months. Donnelly's knees gave out. He slumped into the guest chair. 6 months? "We started getting flags from the DOJ audit systems," Raymond explained, his voice clinical and precise. "Unusual patterns in asset seizures, people getting pulled over for tail light violations, having their cars searched, and large amounts of cash seized under suspicion of drug activity. No charges filed, but the money never returned. It's a classic racket. Highway robbery with a badge." Raymond picked up a brass paperweight from the desk. "We needed a hook. We needed to see the culture on the ground. We needed to see if it was just a few bad apples, or if the rot came from the head." "It's not me," Donnelly gasped. "It's Kowalski. He's a cowboy. I try to rein him in, but... Don't lie to me, Frank. It insults my intelligence." Raymond slammed the paperweight down. The crack echoed like a gunshot. "Kowalski is a thug, yes, but he's a blunt instrument. He doesn't know how to launder the seizure funds into a police athletic league account that pays for your boathouse. That takes management." Raymond stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the bullpen where agents were now boxing up files and cloning hard drives. "I decided to come down personally because I wanted to see Kowalski in action. We knew he patrolled Sector 4. I made myself a target. I sat there. I waited." You baited him?" Donnelly whispered. "I existed," Raymond corrected sharply. "I sat on a bench. That's all it took. He saw a black man with nice shoes and he saw a payday. He didn't see a citizen. He saw prey." Raymond turned back to Donnelly. "But here's the twist, Frank. I didn't expect you to be this sloppy. I thought I'd have to dig for the financial records. But you let him run wild. You created a culture where a sergeant feels comfortable assaulting a man reading a book in broad daylight because he knows the captain has his back. I can cut a deal," Donnelly blurted out. Desperation clawed at his throat. "I can give you names, bigger names. The chief." Raymond smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, we'll get the names, Frank. But not because you gave them to us. We'll get them because Agent Sterling is currently decrypting your private server, the one you keep under your floorboards at home. We found that 10 minutes ago." Donnelly put his head in his hands and began to sob. It was a pathetic, heaving sound. "Save the tears for the jury," Raymond said. "Get up." Where are we going?" "We aren't going anywhere. You are going to processing. I'm going to finish my interrogation." "Interrogation? Who else is there?" "Kowalski," Raymond said. "I want to look him in the eye when he finds out that his training exercise just took down the entire department." Raymond walked out of the office, leaving the broken captain behind. he moved toward interrogation room 1. Inside, Derek Kowalski was cuffed to the table. He had stopped shouting. Now, he was just staring at the wall, rocking slightly. When the door opened, he looked up, hoping for a lawyer. Instead, he got the director. Raymond walked in. He didn't sit. He stood by the door, closing it with a soft click. The room was soundproof. The air was stale. "You asked me a question in the car, Derek," Raymond said, using the man's first name for the first time. "You asked if I realized that my fancy vocabulary doesn't work in the cage." Kowalski flinched. "You were right," Raymond continued. "Words don't mean much in here. Power means everything. And right now, Derek, you have none. You are powerless. You are alone. You are the nobody you thought I was." "I'm sorry," Kowalski wept. "I'm sorry, sir. I have kids. I have a mortgage." "The man you beat up last week had kids too," Raymond said, his voice hard as iron. "We checked the logs. Jamal Davis, a carpenter. You broke his eye socket because he asked why you pulled him over. He lost his job because he couldn't see straight. Did you think about his mortgage?" Kowalski looked down, shame burning his face. "I didn't think so." Raymond leaned in close. "I want you to understand something, Derek. This isn't karma. Karma is a cosmic accident. This is justice. It's deliberate. It's slow. And it is going to grind you down to dust." The door opened again. Agent Sterling stuck her head in. "Director? We found something in Kowalski's dash cam footage from earlier today, before he picked you up." "What is it?" Raymond asked. He stopped a minivan, a mother and 2 kids. He confiscated $500 meant for rent. He told her it was evidence and threatened to call child services if she complained. Raymond looked at Kowalski. The disgust on his face was absolute. "Add extortion to the charge sheet," Raymond said. "And Agent Sterling?" "Yes, sir." "Make sure the press is outside when you walk him out. I want the cameras to see him. I want every bully with a badge to see Derek Kowalski in cuffs and wonder if the person they're harassing is the one who will end them." "Done," Sterling said. Raymond straightened his jacket. "I'm done here. Get this filth out of my sight." The perp walk was not quiet. When Sergeant Derek Kowalski was led out of the 4th Precinct, it wasn't into the respectful silence usually afforded to officers in trouble. It was into a blinding storm of camera flashes and shouting reporters. Agent Sterling had been true to her word. She had leaked the arrest to every major network. Kowalski, who had spent his career puffing his chest out to intimidate the streets, now hunched over, trying to hide his face in his shoulder. The handcuffs were tight, the wind was cold, but the jeers from the crowd gathered outside were colder. "Hey, Sarge, where's your probable cause now?" someone shouted from behind the police tape. "Pick on someone your own size, Derek." Kowalski was shoved into the back of a federal transport van. As the door slammed shut, shutting out the light, he realized with a sickening lurch that he wasn't going to the county lockup where his buddies worked. He was going to federal holding. He was going to a place where his badge was a target on his back. Back inside the precinct, the atmosphere was funereal. The remaining officers, those not implicated in the immediate sweep, sat at their desks, terrified to speak. They had watched their captain and their toughest sergeant dragged away like common criminals. Raymond Holloway stood in the center of the room. He had retrieved his headphones but left them around his neck. He looked at the sea of blue uniforms. "Listen up," Raymond said. He didn't shout, but the room went dead silent. "Some of you are good police," Raymond began. "Some of you took this job to help people. But you stayed silent. You watched men like Kowalski and Donnelly turn this precinct into a gang, and you looked the other way because you wanted to get home safe. because you wanted to be part of the brotherhood. He walked slowly down the aisle of desks. There is no brotherhood in corruption. There is only complicity. Today, the 4th Precinct starts over. Federal oversight is now in effect. Every arrest, every stop, every seizure will be reviewed. If you are dirty, resign now. Save us the paperwork. If you are clean, then stay, and prove that you deserve the badge. He stopped at Rookie Benji Foster's desk. Foster was staring at his hands. "Officer Foster," Raymond said. Foster stood up, trembling. "Sir." "You have a choice," Raymond said. "You can quit. No one would blame you. You saw the worst of this job in your first month. Or you can finish your shift." Foster looked at Raymond, then at the empty desks of the men who had terrified him just hours ago. He took a deep breath. I'll finish my shift, sir." Raymond nodded, a rare, genuine smile touching his lips. "Good man. Agent Sterling will need your statement first." The media firestorm. By the next morning, the story was everywhere. FBI director arrested by dirty cop. The shocking video. The footage from Kowalski's cruiser, leaked predictably, went viral within hours. The contrast was cinematic. The belligerent, shouting sergeant versus the calm, articulate black man who just happened to run the most powerful law enforcement agency in the country. Social media exploded. Justice now. Kowalski thought he was the hunter. Turns out he was the mouse. Master Karma. Legal eagle. The way Director Holloway uses the law as a shield is a masterclass. "I am the probable cause." Famous last words. Blue line reform. This exposes the rot. If they do this to the FBI director, imagine what they do to a regular guy who can't fight back. The video became a symbol. It wasn't just about one cop. It was about the arrogance of unchecked power. But while the internet celebrated the gotcha moment, the reality in the courtroom was far grimmer. The indictment. 3 months later, the federal courthouse was a fortress. The trial of United States versus Derek Kowalski and United States versus Frank Donnelly had drawn national attention. The prosecution was led by Assistant U.S. Attorney Sarah Jenkins, a shark in a skirt suit who had been hand-picked by the DOJ. The defense attorney for Kowalski was a frantic, overworked public defender named Miller. The police union had abandoned Kowalski the moment the federal charges dropped. They cut him loose to save the herd. Kowalski sat at the defense table, looking 20 pounds lighter. His skin was pasty, his eyes hollow. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in 90 days. Raymond Holloway took the stand on the 3rd day. When he walked into the courtroom, the air changed. He wore a navy suit, perfectly tailored. He didn't look at Kowalski. He looked at the jury. "Director Holloway," Jenkins asked, "could you describe your emotional state when Sergeant Kowalski placed his hands on you?" Raymond leaned into the microphone. "I wasn't afraid for myself. I knew who I was. I knew I had the resources to survive the encounter. I was afraid for every other man who looks like me, who sat on that bench before I did. I was afraid for the people who don't have a badge in their pocket to save them." "Did Sergeant Kowalski ask for your name before he grabbed you?" "No." "Did he ask for your explanation?" "No. He saw a narrative he liked, and he tried to force me into it." The defense tried to paint Raymond as provocative. "Isn't it true, Director, that you refused to show ID? That you were technically non-compliant?" Raymond looked at the defense attorney with pity. "Counselor, technical non-compliance is not a license for assault. I was exercising my Fourth Amendment rights, rights that Sergeant Kowalski swore an oath to protect. If exercising my rights is provocation, then the problem isn't me, it's the badge. The jury nodded. The defense crumbled. But the real twist, the dagger in the heart of the defense, came from an unexpected source. The rookie's testimony. Benji Foster took the stand. He looked older now. The baby face was gone, replaced by a weary hardness. He was still in uniform. He hadn't quit. "Officer Foster," Jenkins asked, "did you feel threatened by the defendant, Sergeant Kowalski?" Foster looked at Kowalski. For the first time in his life, he didn't look down. "Every day," Foster said quietly. "He told me that policing was about dominance. He told me that we had to break people before they broke us. He told me to plant evidence if I had to." A gasp went through the courtroom. "Did he tell you to plant evidence on Director Holloway?" "He didn't have to," Foster said. "He just told me to learn the game. And when we got to the station, he took the cash. He always took the cash." Kowalski put his head on the table and sobbed. It was over. The blue wall hadn't just cracked. It had been dismantled by the one person he thought he could bully into silence. The sentencing hearing was brief. The judge, a stern woman named Justice Reynolds, had no patience for theatrics. She looked at Kowalski and Donnelly with undisguised contempt. "You have disgraced your uniform," she said. "You have taken the public trust and used it as a weapon for personal gain and petty tyranny. Sergeant Kowalski, you treated the citizens of this city as enemy combatants. Captain Donnelly, you ran a criminal enterprise disguised as a police precinct." The verdicts. Frank Donnelly, 15 years in federal prison for racketeering, conspiracy and wire fraud. All assets seized, including the boathouse and his pension. Derek Kowalski, 12 years for deprivation of rights under color of law, assault, grand larceny, and extortion. As the gavel banged down, the sound echoed like a thunderclap. Kowalski was hauled away, weeping. He shouted something about it being a mistake, about just doing his job. But no one was listening. The doors closed behind him. The aftermath. Outside the courthouse, the steps were crowded with microphones. Raymond Holloway stood at the podium. He didn't look triumphant. He looked tired. "Justice was served today," Raymond told the press. "But let's be clear. This shouldn't have required the director of the FBI to get arrested. It shouldn't have required a sting operation. The system shouldn't only work when the victim is powerful." He looked into the cameras. "We are implementing new oversight protocols nationwide. But protocols are just paper. We need character. We need officers who understand that their strength comes from their humanity, not their authority." He stepped down. As he walked to his waiting SUV, a woman approached him. It was the mother from the minivan, the one Sterling had mentioned, the one Kowalski had extorted earlier that fateful day. She was crying. She held the hand of a little girl. "Director?" she whispered. Raymond stopped. The Secret Service agents moved to intercept, but he waved them off. "It's okay. I got my money back," she said, her voice shaking. "Agent Sterling brought it to my house, and she told me what you did." She reached out and squeezed his hand. "Thank you. I didn't think anyone cared about people like us." Raymond held her hand in both of his. "I care, and I'm sorry it took so long." He watched her walk away. It felt better than any conviction. A year later, Oakbridge Park was peaceful. The leaves were green, the fountain was bubbling. Benji Foster walked his beat. He was walking alone. He wasn't in a car. He was on foot, talking to the hot dog vendor, nodding at the joggers. He saw a man sitting on the same bench near the fountain. It was Raymond Holloway. He was wearing a suit this time, but he had the same book in his hand, The Geopolitics of Asymmetric Warfare. Foster walked over. He stopped 5 feet away. "Afternoon, Director," Foster said respectfully. Raymond looked up. He smiled. Officer Foster? Or is it detective now? Foster grinned. Detective as of Tuesday. Vice Squad. Congratulations. You earned it. Raymond closed his book. How is the precinct? Different, Foster said. Better. Quiet. We got rid of the cowboys. Now we just do the work. It's hard, but it's honest. That's all we can ask for. Raymond stood up. I'm heading back to D.C. tonight. But I wanted to come by. To see the spot. The spot where it all changed? Foster asked. The spot where I met a good cop, Raymond corrected. Keep your head up, Benji. The world needs more witnesses. Raymond walked away towards the waiting black SUV. Foster watched him go, then turned back to the park. A kid had dropped his ice cream cone and was crying. Foster walked over, not to arrest him, not to yell, but to buy him a new one. It was a small thing, but it was a different world than the one Derek Kowalski had built. The fall of the 4th Precinct wasn't just a local news story. It was a domino. In the months following the trial, the Kowalski precedent became a legal term. Defense attorneys across the country started using the footage to challenge excessive force cases. Departments in Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York launched internal audits to avoid being the next headline. Derek Kowalski spent his first week in federal prison in protective custody. He was eventually moved to general population in a low-security facility, but his life as a predator was over. In prison, the badge meant nothing. He was just another inmate, and he spent every day looking over his shoulder, feeling the same fear he had inflicted on others for 20 years. Captain Donnelly's wife divorced him and sold the boathouse before the feds could seize it, or so she tried. The endless litigation left him broke and alone, making collect calls that no one answered. But the real ending wasn't about the bad guys losing. It was about the system shifting, inch by painful inch. Raymond Holloway retired 2 years later. He didn't write a memoir. He didn't go on a speaking tour. He moved to a quiet house in Maryland, near a lake. One afternoon, he received a package in the mail. There was no return address. Inside was a simple, leather-bound book. It was a new edition of the Geopolitics of Asymmetric Warfare. On the inside cover, there was a handwritten note. To the man who taught me that the biggest weapon we have isn't the gun on our hip, but the truth. Thank you for saving my soul. Detective Benjamin Foster. Raymond smiled, closed the book, and looked out at the water. The sun was setting, casting long shadows. The world wasn't perfect, but it was a little bit lighter than it had been before. And that is how the arrogance of one man brought down an empire of corruption. Derek Kowalski thought he was untouchable, but he forgot the most important rule of power. It is a loan, not a gift. When you abuse it, the debt eventually comes due. Raymond Holloway didn't just win a court case. He proved that dignity is a force that cannot be handcuffed. He showed us that sometimes the quietest man in the room is the one you should fear the most. Karma isn't always instant. Sometimes it waits on a park bench, reading a book, waiting for you to make the first move. If this story fired you up, make sure to hit that like button. It helps us get these stories to more people. Subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss our next saga of justice served cold. And tell me in the comments, have you ever seen someone abuse their power and get instantly humbled? I want to hear your stories. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.